them. Nelson Aldrich was the Republican whip in the Senate back in 1910. He was given a responsible position. He was the chairman of the National Monetary Commission, and his assignment was break the grip of the money trust. That was his assignment as a United States Senator. The money trust were the money powers in New York, those spoken of by Abraham Lincoln, who had taken control now. And they were manipulating the economy and manipulating the people, and the people knew that. And so the senator was given the assignment to break the grip of the money trust. And he's put in charge as chairman of the National Monetary Commission. Well, guess what?
Conflict of interest.
He was part of the money trust. We'll show that right now. I'm going to show you a picture of a secret combination. Most of you haven't seen a photograph of a secret combination. Wouldn't be too secret if you got a photograph. But we do have a photograph. It's in Edward Griffin's book. It's an excellent photograph of a secret combination. Let's look at the characters that played the role in this event. Abraham Piot Andrew. He was the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Later he became a congressman and was very prominent in banking circles. Frank Vanderlip, president of the National City Bank of New York. He represented William Rockefeller. He represented Kuhn Loeb and Company. Henry Davison, senior partner in the J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton, president of the First National Bank of New York. Benjamin Strong, head of the J.P. Morgan Bankers Trust Company. He became the first head of the Federal Reserve System 3 years later. Now we're going to pull this together in a moment. If you haven't heard this story before, it'll blow your mind. This story about money is unbelievable. And don't forget Paul Warburg, a partner in Kuhn Loeb and Company, representing the Rothschilds and the Warburgs in Europe. Now these men had something in common. They were competitors. For the most part, they were competitors. And now they're going to get together and have a little private meeting, a little secret meeting where they can decide how they could improve their situation in the world. And by the way, these men controlled 25% of the world's wealth. That much money was in their control. There it is. That's the picture of a secret combination. In November of 1910, Jekyll Island is an island off the coast of Georgia. Now today it's a park. You can go there and visit. You can see where these men met. And they proudly tell the story of the beginning of the Federal Reserve System as part of the National Park Service. It happens here. This is today. They met in this building in J.P. Morgan's private hunting club on Jekyll Island in November of 1910. They explain how secretive the meeting was. I won't go into details. You can read it in Griffin's book. Great amount of secrecy. No one must know that these banking competitors were coming together with the chairman, the Senate chairman of the group that's to break the money trust. No one wants to know that. If they did, then they couldn't possibly get their new legislation into law. And so completely, totally secretive, they planned the Federal Reserve System. They planned the act that became known as that under that title. It's written later in 1935. They're now proud that they've done it, and they start exposing themselves. And so you can go to writings in such things as the Saturday Evening Post. We won't take the time to read them, but this became public knowledge, how they had started it as a secret group. Now, this is one of those little gems that a researcher comes across. I thought I would put it on the screen. I was studying something one day, and all of a sudden I noticed in a newspaper an advertisement for employees. They needed employees at the San Francisco Bank, the San Francisco branch of the Federal Reserve Bank. And in the advertisement it said, quote, "Some people still think we're a branch of the government. We're not." Can you say it clearer than that? The Federal Reserve System is not a branch of the government. We're not. We're the banker's bank. It's a private banking system. Well, what tie do they have to the government? What is the Fed? An association of private banks, a cartel, operating in partnership with the Federal Reserve, with the federal government. They're in partnership, a public-private partnership. That seems to be more and more common nowadays. I see a sign on the freeway that says, a public-private partnership. The Department of Transportation has joined with Chevron to set up this rest station for you. I wonder how Chevron is benefiting from that. So they have a public-private partnership with the private banks and the federal government. And this is how it works. If you go into the lobby of a Federal Reserve Bank, at least they had it when I went into the lobby, they have a display of brochures, and you're invited to take the brochures and read the history of the bank, how it started. And so I plucked out a bunch of brochures. This is an illustration I had my son draw for me. He was about 5 years old at the time. I said, son, I want you to draw a picture of Honest John, a banker. He's a goldsmith banker from the old days. Now this is way back in Europe before the United States. He had established his reputation as a secure depository for precious metal. He was a goldsmith, and if you would leave your gold with him, he would write you a receipt. Now this is all explained in the Federal Reserve literature from the front lobby. He would write you a receipt for the gold, and he would put your gold in his vault, and you would then have a receipt. A warehouse receipt. And it was as good as gold, because everybody knew the gold was in Honest John's vault. And so you didn't bother to go back and get your gold, you just exchanged receipts. When you wanted to buy something, you handed a piece of paper, the warehouse receipt. Sounds good, doesn't it? But Honest John wasn't so honest. There were lots of Honest Johns. It was expanding the concept of, this is called fractional reserve banking. And there's not even a hint that it's dishonest in any of the literature. It's just the way this great program developed. So Honest John found out that hardly anyone ever came back for their gold, and so he started issuing receipts without enough gold to cover them. And occasionally, Honest Johns were discovered not to be honest, and there was a run on the bank, and Honest John was run out of town or hung or whatever they did to thieves. Okay, this is all explained in the Federal Reserve literature. This is an illustration directly out of one of their brochures. I love it because I looked at that and I thought, that reminds me of a pyramid scheme. They needed a name. So somewhere early in the process, before the act ever it went to Congress, Edward Griffin reasons through, they needed a name that was respected by the public. We need something that's solid and well-founded, like Federal. I mean, that's a good name, isn't it? I mean, it gives you a feeling of comfort and stability. It's Federal. And we need to have the people believe that there's something in storage somewhere, like the goldsmith's vault filled with gold. It's going to be a Federal Reserve. We're going to have reserves somewhere. And we need a system. If we're going to have the people believe that the power of the banks is taken out of New York, they need to understand there's a system. And so let's build banks across the country. We'll even build one in San Francisco. And you can stand out in front of the San Francisco bank and just think now, you can stand there with your wife and you could say, look, Maud, look at this big, beautiful new bank. Now we know that the system is spread across the country and that the bank power in New York has been dissolved. Yeah. So they put system, and that's the name, Federal Reserve System. It's not federal, they have no reserves, and it's certainly not a system in the sense that we thought it would be. These are illustrations from their literature. They make so much money that I can't understand why they didn't hire a better artist. I had to color the money in this picture. They're controlling the valves. This is their illustration. They're controlling the flow of money coming out of the Federal Reserve System as these men in the back of the building are cranking the valves open and closed so that there would always be a stable economy and there would be no inflation. We'll give you all the rest of the things they claimed they were going to do. Oh dear, I wished I had a picture of John Adams up there. This great American hero. He declared in his day, every dollar of a bank bill that is issued beyond the quantity of gold and silver in the vaults represents nothing, and is therefore a cheat upon somebody. Can you say it better than that? If there's not gold or silver in the vault, that represents nothing, and is therefore a cheat upon somebody, according to John Adams. Oh, I love this illustration. This is a flow chart. Flow charts help us to understand how things happen. Let's suppose Congress needs money. Now that's not hard to suppose. And they need lots of money. Lots and lots of money. And so they go to the Treasury and they say, we need money. And the Treasury says, we're sorry, you spent all the money we collected in taxes by January 15th. Oh, they say that's no problem. And so the Congress goes to the printing office. And at the United States printing office, they ask them, they say, we need money. Oh, that's no problem, they say. We'll print the United States Treasury bond. Now they do a beautiful job, and our example here is no longer large enough. When I did this lesson a year ago, $1 billion was a lot of money. It isn't anymore. Today I should have had $1 trillion up there for my example. If we're going to give out $150 billion to this economic stimulus package, we're going to need more than $1 billion. Well, the printing office says, we'll print the United States Treasury bond. And they do a nice job on good paper, and they put a golden border on it, and it's really awesome. And you hold it up to the light, guess what you can see? IOU.
Yeah.
That's all it is, just an IOU. Oh, okay. So then Congress takes the IOU and they offer it for sale. And people in the public, they buy IOUs or Treasury bonds. Now, I'm giving you the simplified version. There are other ways to create money out of nothing, but this is a very common one. The public, alas, doesn't buy enough. This is where the Federal Reserve System comes in. The Congress takes the Treasury bond to the Federal Reserve. Now, I'm going to give you the illustration when this started. Remember, it was before computers. I'm sure today it's a computer entry. This started in 1913, actually set up in 1914. And so in 1914, when they got it rolling, they would take their Treasury bond to the Fed office, and there the officer of the Fed would open a huge drawer. Now, I just imagine it was huge because he had to write a lot of checks and had a lot of Treasury bonds in it. So he needed a big drawer, and he would pull out a big checkbook. He had to have a big checkbook because he was going to write big checks. And he would write a check for $1 billion and hand it to Congress. And Congress would then give him the Treasury bond, and he would put it in the drawer and close the drawer. Now I want to ask a real important question. Where did the money come from on which to write the check? Was there anything backing this check that he wrote? No, it's just a piece of paper.
Check heading.
Just a piece of paper. He traded one piece of paper for another piece of paper, and there's nothing in back of either of them. Well, now what does Congress do? The Fed sends the check to the Treasury, but what does the Treasury do with it? They deposit it. They deposit it in the Federal Reserve Bank, usually the Bank of New York. If you're having a hard time understanding this, that's okay because it's incomprehensible. And then Congress begins writing checks on the new money they just created. The Treasury deposits the check in their checking account, and Congress begins writing checks. They send $100 million to some foreign dictator. They pay the bill at the United Nations. They funnel another $100 million to the International Monetary Fund. They buy some votes with benefits of some kind. They invade some foreign country. They create an economic stimulus rebate. But $1 billion wasn't enough. Now we need $150 billion. That's easy. We just print more bonds or put bigger numbers on them. Or whatever is in the national interest. Now this is another one of the illustrations coming from the front office of the Federal Reserve Bank. This shows how they can multiply the money. Whether they multiply it by a factor of 10 or 20 is up to them. This is the arithmetic that they use. We're going to use for our illustration today the multiplication factor of 10. Okay, here's how it works. The multiplying capacity of reserve money. This man works for the United States Post Office. Now he's just a good, decent, honest postman. He's your mailman, comes to your house and drops off your mail each day. I know that he works for the post office Because I can see it on his tie clip. Yes. Now, he has just received $100 from the federal government. They paid him, with other words, for his services. He doesn't care that 2 days ago there was nothing and it was created out of nothing. He doesn't even think about that. He just got a check for $100, just like you're going to get in a week or two when they give you the economic stimulus. You're going to get a check for $300. And what are you going to do with it? Oh, you're going to run out and spend it, aren't you? And stimulate the economy. Okay, this is such a sham, I can't stop to explain it right here, but follow further. We're going to follow what he does with these $100. He takes these $100 to the Happy Valley Bank, and he deposits it at the Happy Valley Bank. I would like to deposit $100. Now, I was in the bank yesterday. I deposited $1,000, and I dread to think what they're doing with my $1,000 today. Because not far from that window, there's another window called the Happy Valley Bank Loan Department. And at the Happy Valley Bank Loan Department, the word has just gotten over to his window, someone has deposited $100. Oh, he says, oh, an announcement, folks. We have $900 available. Huh? Did you follow the arithmetic? Because they deposited $100, he now has $900 available. Because the Federal Reserve's multiplying capacity, they set it that, as our example here, they set it at 10. You have to have 10% in reserve, and you can loan out $900 if you have $100 reserve. Where did the $100 come from?
Out of the air.
Came out of the air from nothing. And now it's been deposited in the bank, they've multiplied it, and now they have $900 of nothing. Does this sound bizarre? I gave this lesson in Logan, Utah a few years ago, and on the front row was a distinguished gentleman in a gray flannel suit with a necktie. There's only one man in this auditorium today with a necktie, and that's this man here in this gray flannel suit. At the end of the lecture, and he listened intently and took copious notes. And at the end of the lecture, he handed his one piece of his copious notes to the clerk and the person at the door. They came up with a kind of a grin. They handed it to me, and it said, I agree with everything you said, even though I am the chairman of the local First Security Bank. That was a nice endorsement. Okay, what we're giving you is a simplified version. I agree. It's a simplified version, but we're telling you how it happens. It's the way it takes place. For every dollar that is created out of nothing for the federal government, $9 are created out of nothing for the commercial banking system. Oh, you say, it's a public-private partnership. Now you can start to see why they have such a happy relationship working together. Now let's take a few more of these, the list of 7 that were listed on the Federal Reserve. The Fed is the supreme instrument of use.